Hey friends, it's Somer, and in this video we're going to be checking out all the brand new legendary creatures coming in Modern Horizons 3 and ranking them in an internet-friendly tier list. We're keeping the classic tier list structure over here. At the very top is my personal favorite commanders. These are the ones that I'm most likely to brew around, possibly bring onto Commander Clash, possibly even put into my own personal paper collection. Then there are the legendary creatures that are great as commanders. So they are better in the command zone, great in the 99, obviously better in the 99 than the command zone. Undecided, these are cards that I just can't really grok on the first impression. Maybe there's some key pieces that I'm missing. They could be good, they could be bad, I'm not quite sure. And then finally we have the poop category. Obviously, not all of these cards are made for Commander. Shock and awe, I know. Even though it's called Commander Horizons 3, there are actually some modern playable cards, and some cards are actually designed for modern constructed or even the limited format, for the draft format. So if they're not good in Commander, they show up in the poop category. And as with all these tier ranking guides, keep in mind these rankings are purely subjective. These are my own personal opinions on these cards. I try to back them up with my best arguments on why I don't like them, but you might have differing opinions than me. You probably will have differing opinions than me, so be sure to leave comments on what things I might have missed about some cards. Maybe there's some key interactions with some of these commanders or legendary creatures that I just did not think off the top of my head. Or, you know, you could just roast me in the comment section too. You could say how bad my opinions are or whatever. Have fun. All right, we begin with the first card. This is Ajani Nacatl Pariah. So in Modern Horizons 3, there's a cycle of monocolor Flipwalkers. They are legendary creatures on the front side. They are a monocolor, so there's one for each color, so 5 in total. And then when you fulfill a certain criteria, they flip over to becoming planeswalkers. So they start as legendary creatures. They're on the cheaper end. And then you jump through a hoop and turn them into planeswalkers. That's the gimmick for all of them. And the planeswalker side are all dual colors. So the front side is monocolor, and then the back side is two colors, two color identity. And I think all of them have one ability that cares about the other color that the front side is not. So for example, for Ajani, it cares, it gives you extra bonus if you have a red permanent on the battlefield for one of its abilities, whereas on the front side, it is a white card. Okay, so the first of the Flipwalkers is Ajani Nacatl Pariah. It's 2 mana, 1 and a white for a legendary creature, Cat Warrior. When it enters the battlefield, create a 2/1 white Cat Warrior creature token, and whenever one or more other cats you control die, you may exile Ajani, then return him back onto the battlefield under his owner's control. And then the backside has 3 abilities. The first one, +2, is put a +1/+1 counter on each cat you control. Its 0 ability is create a 2/1 white Cat Warrior creature token. When you do, if you control a red permanent other than Ajani, he deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to any target. And then the final ability is -4. Each opponent chooses an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker from among the non-land permanents they control, then sacrifices the rest. And Ajani starts at 3 loyalty. All right, so the front side is okay. It's like pretty decent in Modern, I would assume, or Limited, because for 2 mana, you're putting 3 power on the battlefield and 3 toughness on the battlefield with 2 different creatures. Then whenever, you know, the token dies or another creature dies, you get to flip Ajani, and the abilities here are quite powerful. If you are in a cat-focused deck and you have a bunch of cat tokens on the battlefield or cat creatures on the battlefield, the +2 ability ticking up is actually just really good. It's just a 2 mana constant anthem effect that keeps getting better and better every single turn. That's wonderful. The 0 ability, it makes a creature, and it also doubles as removal if you have another red permanent on the battlefield, which should be easy enough to do, especially in Commander. Yeah, that's really, really powerful. And then finally, the -4 is pretty easy to do. Basically, the second turn that Ajani is on the battlefield, if you do +2 on the first turn, then the second turn you could immediately use it, the -4, and you just basically thin out your opponent's board state. Your opponents get to choose what they want to keep, so they're always going to be keeping the best things. So you're not removing the best thing ever. But if your opponents have like a bunch of creatures on the battlefield doing -4 and they only get to keep their best one, is really good. And like if they have a bunch of mana rocks on the battlefield, they get to keep, like their Sol Ring or their best mana rock on the battlefield, but then they lose everything else. So that's actually incredibly powerful, and especially for the cost of as little as 4 loyalty, especially if it's the +2 ability is basically adding that every single 2 turns. That's a lot of value for a -4 ability, and then again, keep in mind that the second turn that Ajani is on the battlefield, you can immediately use it. So it can be used pretty often in tangent with the +2, and then the 0 ability is probably the strongest, most consistent one, which makes sense because it's the 0 one. It makes a creature token, and then it deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to any target. So it's just removal plus adds more cats onto the battlefield, and that works very well with the +2 ability because the more cats you have on the battlefield, the more powerful putting +1/+1 counters on each of them becomes. Yeah, this card is just really solid. But the downside of Ajani is the same downside that all Planeswalkers have in Commander, and that they're just weaker in Commander, right? In 1v1, they're much easier to defend because you only have one opponent that you have to defend your Planeswalkers against their creatures. But in Commander, in a typical 4-player free-for-all game, you have 3 opponents, each with their own creatures, each with their own attack steps, and each of them are going to be, default gunning against your Planeswalkers because that's the easiest and most efficient way to neutralize your board state. I do think, though, that Ajani is obviously made to be a cat type of deck, so you're going to have a lot of cat tokens on the battlefield outside of just Ajani himself generating them. So you should have a lot of blockers on the battlefield. So that should make Ajani stick around more often than like just a random Super Friends leader or whatever. Now, typically, cats are primarily white focused or white aligned, and the secondary color of cats is typically green. So I'm curious to see what red adds to this as a Boros like cats deck. So we're looking at the top most played cats in Commander, and boom, we see one. It's sadly focused on artifacts, so it's not quite useful. Then we have a cat ape that puts a trample counter and a menace counter, not very good. Another one that's artifact focused. This Regal Leosaur's kind of cute. Chandra's Ember Cat, not very useful. Blistering Firecat. Okay, so now things are getting kind of desperate. Okay, so there's really not that much that adds red in terms of a cat deck. You're not getting too much. You're just focusing primarily on white, which is fine, but not exciting. So how does Ajani compare to the de facto commander of cats, which is Arbo, Roar of the World? Well, I think Arbo gives you access to more cats because you have access to green, and that's a secondary color for a cat deck. You can still do mono white cats and have more than enough to work with. That's absolutely fine. But green does give you more than red does in this regard. Arbo has a really powerful Eminence ability in that you don't ever have to cast it to get value out of it, just free Drying Ghost for all time. And when it is on the battlefield, you can go tall with your cats. You just have one cat, you pay some mana, and then it gets much, much bigger. So Arbo is go tall, Ajani is more go wide. So in that sense, I think Ajani is actually a nice contender for a cat commander compared to Arbo. I think your secondary color is less interesting for cats. Green is simply a lot better of a color than red is for a cat deck. However, this does promote a go wide cat strategy that Arbo does not promote. Arbo promotes a go tall strategy. So this is a nice balancing point. And I think for the most part, cats do manage to go wide more than they go tall. So Ajani probably is more aligned with what cats are just a little bit better at. They're better at flooding the board with cat tokens rather than having one big cat and then giving it like trample and doubling its power. So I don't know. I think there's some stuff working against poor Ajani, but I do really like that it is a 2-mana commander. So you're always going to have it out on turn 2. If you throw in a little bit of an aristocrat strategy or something, so you can start sacrificing that cat warrior more efficiently, or just like tutor up Skull Clamp or whatever, then you're gaming and it can flip up very easily. And you can flip it as early as turn 2, which is really powerful. Yeah, I actually, you know what? I like this one. I actually do like this one as a cat leader. So I started off kind of down on Ajani, but as we kind of talked our way through it, I actually think it's great as a commander. I think it is an interesting change of pace for a cat commander outside of Arbo. Like I said, worst secondary color of red versus green. but I do like that it's a 2-drop, comes out early, can flip very easily, and then it promotes a go wide strategy, which I think cats are just better at. Next, we've got an incredibly powerful commander. This is Arna, Skycaptain. I'm not even going to bother trying to pronounce that last name. Let me know in the comments section how you would pronounce it. Anyway, it's a 5-mana Esper legendary creature human knight. It has flying, lifelink. It has ward. You have to discard a card if you want to target Arna. And then it's also a 4/4. As whenever a modified creature you control attacks, double the number of each kind of counter on it. Then for each non-token permanent attached to it, create a token that's a copy of that permanent attached to that creature. Okay, so let's first unpack this ability. What this means is basically when Arna's on the battlefield, whenever you're attacking with any modified creature, you get to double the number of counters on it. So if it has a +1/+1 counter, now it's going to have 2 +1/+1 counters. If it has like a menace counter on it or something like that, you double it. It doesn't really help it, but you know, it's nice. And then for each non-token permanent attached to it, which is typically equipments and auras, you create a token that's a copy of that permanent attached to that creature. So if your creatures are modified in any way, +1/+1 counters, auras, equipments, whatever style you're going for, Arna's going to double the value of those attacking creatures, which is bananas. It's very, very good. It's not limited to one attacking creature. It's every single modified creature. So that's really powerful. Arna herself is a 4/4 flying lifelink for 5. 5 is on the topper end for commanders these days, but it is totally playable. It also comes with ward. Nobody wants to be discarding cards to target Arna, which is quite good. You're also in white and blue, 2 of the best colors for protecting Arna. So blue has counter magic and white has really cheap, efficient protection spells, giving it indestructible and hexproof and all that good stuff. So even if your opponents have cards to discard, that's not even a guaranteed thing that Arna's actually going to be dying anyway. So yeah, the body is very nice, but more importantly, the ability is very, very nice. The other really cool thing is that Arna is very open-ended in how you build her. You can focus on equipment, you can focus on auras, you can focus on +1/+1 counters, you can focus on going Voltron and just like throwing all these stuff onto Arna, and then whenever Arna is attacking, you just double the value out of all those things, and then she starts, you know, 2-shotting, 1-shotting people very, very quickly. Or you could go wide, right? Like you can go like a token strategy and try to put +1/+1 counters on everything. I think like Feldar Retreat does both those things, for example, like generates tokens very easily and then puts +1/+1 counters on your whole team. You can go wide with modifications like +1/+1 counters, and then Arna's going to be really great there too. So there's a lot of flexibility here. Now, one comparison point for Arna that is a commander that I actually really like and is kind of definitely overshadowed by her now is Stang Echo Warrior. I like running Stang as a aura deck where basically it's a 4-drop Gruul Aura Enchantress style deck. That's how I tried to do it, Voltron. You play Stang, you load him up with very powerful auras, and then you swing in with Stang. Stang makes a copy of himself and all the auras that are going out attacking as well. But they don't stick around. You have to sacrifice all those tokens at the beginning of the next end step. So you're doubling the value output of Stang and all the auras that you have on him or equipment you have on him, but it's temporary. Like it only sticks around for a little bit, and Stang himself has to attack. Now compare that to Arna. You pay 1 additional mana, but you have access to a 3rd color instead of just 2. And also Arna does not have to be the one attacking to get that triggered ability. You could play Arna, attack with a different modified creature immediately, and still trigger Arna, still get that value immediately. And the body is just much stronger. It has lifelink, it has evasion with flying, and it has ward. All right, so I really like Arna. I'm a big fan of Stang Aura Voltron, and Arna just looks like it's going to be doing the same thing, but better in better colors, and just, I don't know, I like it a lot. Next, we've got a new Ashling Flame Dancer. This is a 4-mana red legendary creature, Elemental Shaman. You don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. And Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, discard a card, then draw a card. If this is the 2nd time this ability has resolved this turn, Ashling deals 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. If it's the 3rd time, add 4 red mana. So this is straight up red spell slinger. It cares about casting a bunch of instant or sorcery spells, thinks it's magecraft. It allows you to constantly be rummaging because you discard a card, then draw a card all the time. And then if you do it up to 3 times per turn, you get increasing value, dealing 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. And then if it's the 3rd time, you generate a whole bunch of mana. And you don't have to spend it immediately because you don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. That's all really good. That's good value. Ashling reads to me kind of like a storm supporter, because all the rummaging means not only can you find your key storm finishers or key storm payoffs or whatever, but you're also filling the graveyard at the same time. And that means, for example, if you have like a Mizzix's Mastery as your big payoff at the end, you can dump a whole bunch of instant and sorceries on purpose into the graveyard, and then Mizzix's Mastery and totally pop off, cast all those spells for free. Ashling's second ability is also incredibly doable in a Spell Slinger deck, just dealing 2 damage to each opponent and each creature, and it's begging for like a Basilisk Collar effect, where you give Ashling both Lifelink, which, will generate a bunch of life gain, but more importantly, Death Touch, which means that 2 damage is always going to kill all opposing creatures, which is very nice. And the third ability just reads Storm to me. Basically, you're casting a whole bunch of spells, and then you're very starved on mana to keep casting more and more spells, and then Ashling gives you 4 more to work with on that turn. So is Ashling like the best mono red Storm commander? I would say no. I think we already have stiff competition there. Like, off the top of my head, there's the latest Urabrask, which is a very good mono-red Storm commander, and also Burji, which I think is like the de facto Storm commander in mono-red, where just you cast a red spell, you get 1 red mana. It's a simple exchange there. Whereas Ashling provides a lot of value, but it's a lot of different values. It's not just aimed directly at only Storm, it's also burning your opponent's creatures and then also giving you some mana. In the 99 though, I think she is exceptional, and also obviously you don't have to stick to mono red Storm either. The 2 most important colors for instants and sorceries is it. So if you are an Is It Spellslinger, I think you just jam Ashling in the 99 of those without thinking too much about it. And then if you're also mono red Storm, I think you jam her in the 99 without thinking too much about it either. But she is also a great commander too. I just think she's better in the 99. Next, we have one of the 2 new commanders from the Eldrazi Precon. This is Azlask, the Swelling Scourge. This is a 3-mana colorless legendary creature Eldrazi. Whenever it or another colorless creature you control dies, you get an experience counter, and then you can pay Wooburg. Creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of experience counters you have, and Scions and Spawns you control gain Indestructible and Annihilator 1 until end of turn, and it's a 2/2. So the Eldrazi Precon focuses on, guess what? Eldrazi and also colorless matters, and the face commander Kozilek focuses basically on your typical Eldrazi, your Eldrazi Titans and all that stuff, and doubles up the value of them, whereas Azlask actually takes a little bit of a different turn and focuses not on the big Eldrazi Titans, but rather Eldrazi Scions and Spawns, which are just Eldrazi tokens. There's a lot of Eldrazi that make Scions or Spawns very efficiently, and they all can be sacrificed for colorless mana, which is their primary purpose, is like their chump blockers, their early board presence, but then you sacrifice them to ramp out your really expensive Eldrazi haymakers. Azlask actually turns the Eldrazi Spawns and Scions, the tokens, into your win condition. You want to poop out a whole bunch of those onto the battlefield and then activate this really powerful Wooburg ability, make them into serious threats, and then just attack and just annihilate your opponents. Literally annihilate them, because they're all going to have Annihilator 1. So there's a decent amount of Eldrazi token generators, but I want to highlight 2 of the best ones for an Azlask deck. It's Pawn of Ulamog, which whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you may create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi Spawn. And then Sifter of Skulls, which is just the upgraded version of Pawn of Ulamog. It itself is an Eldrazi, costs 1 more, it has Devoid, and instead of creating a 0/1 spawn when a non-token creature dies, you make a 1/1 Eldrazi Scion instead. So just a slightly stronger version. Both of these are great because Azlask kind of promotes a aristocrat strategy. If you're sacrificing non-token creatures, you're getting a bunch of experience counters, and then you utilize those experience counters as your win condition because it fuels the Wooburg activated ability. So yeah, that's how you build Azlask. It's basically Eldrazi tokens with a strong aristocrats theme. Personally, I like the commander a whole bunch, but I have been hearing a lot of murmurs that Azlask is very salty, particularly because the Annihilator 1, giving Annihilator 1 to like 10 creatures, means you're doing Annihilator 10 on your opponents, and people get very, very salty if you're doing Annihilator 10 and making them sacrifice their entire board, including their lands. I can understand that, but I feel like, I don't know, I feel like Azlask has to work for it to start annihilating your board, and you have plenty of time to, deal with that situation. But I understand that it can be salty when it happens. Anywho, for Azlask, I'm going to put you in the great as a commander because it's definitely a build around. Next, we have Cayth, Famed Mechanist. This is the secondary commander in the Energy Precon. This is a 4-mana Jeskai legendary creature dwarf artificer. It's a 3/3 and has Fabricate 1. And that means when this creature enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on it, or create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. And other non-token creatures you control have Fabricate 1, and you can pay 2 mana, tap it, choose 1, populate, or proliferate. Now, Cayth is basically the commander for the energy deck if you don't like energy, basically. If you don't like energy and you somehow got stuck with the energy deck, you could replace the face commander, which is more energy focused, with this one, which is only tangentially focused on energy, because you could activate its ability and proliferate and get 1 more energy, but that's incredibly inefficient way of generating energy. Incredibly inefficient. It's more focused on basically a creature heavy deck. You want to be loaded up on creatures. And then by loading up on creatures, you either get to put +1/+1 counters on your creatures, or just get even more creatures by putting 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature tokens on the battlefield with them. In that sense, Cayth is very similar to, let's say, a Torrens, where you want to play as many creatures as possible, because the more creatures you play, the more, tokens you have on the battlefield, or you focus on +1/+1 instead. And Cayth supports both. If you're going focused on +1/+1 counters, you want to activate Cayth to proliferate. If you're focusing on just 1/1 servos and going wide, then you're more likely to activate it for populate. So I think of this as basically a go wide creature heavy deck that probably has very strong artifact sub-themes, because, if you are choosing to make artifact creature tokens, they're all artifacts, so they will pump up your metalcraft. They're going to pump up any cards that care about creatures. You can use them to improvise spells. You can tap them to your Shimmer Drake or Shimmer Dragon or whatever to draw cards. You can do all nutty things because artifacts are inherently broken in Commander. So you can do a billion different things with your essentially free artifacts that are entering the battlefield with it. Maybe you could even go like Cayth Affinity. That could be super fun, right? Like you play affinity creatures, you make more servos, and that will fuel other affinity effects. Like, yeah, you could just get a bunch of artifacts on the battlefield just by playing creatures passively. I have to say, it's great as a commander. All right, next we have another card from the precons. This is from the Jund Graveyard Lurgoyf precon. This is Coram the Undertaker. This is a 4-mana Jund legendary creature human warrior. It's a 0/5, but it gets +X+O, where X is the greatest power among creature cards in all graveyards. And whenever it attacks, each player mills a card. And during each of your turns, you may play a land and cast a spell from among cards in graveyards that were put there from libraries this turn. So Coram is the option for the precon, the Jund Lurgoyf precon, if you don't really care about Lurgoyfs, and there aren't that many to care about, to be fair. If you don't care that much about it and you just want to play like a Jund big stompy graveyard deck matters type deck, then Coram is just going to be a better commander. And it is really, really strong. This one is really strong. Not only does it have very high Voltron potential thanks to its first ability. What you can do is you can run like Entomb or Buried Alive, anything that can put creatures from your library directly into the graveyard. And then you could just pop in like the biggest creatures. You can put in, for example, Yargle and Multani, and then Coram is now an 18 power creature that can start two-shotting opponents, or one-shot if you can pump them up just a little bit more. Or you could put in Lord of the Extinction, which is probably going to be the best option mid to late game when everybody has some amount of creatures in their graveyard. Lord of the Extinction is going to be huge, and then you just one-tap people with Coram when you're attacking. It's super easy to do. And then when it's attacking, you also get to mill everybody. And then finally, its last ability is just straight up really good card advantage as you're milling people, either of Coram's ability or other type of cards that are milling people. You get to also play lands and cast spells from the graveyard, and not just your own graveyard. So if you don't mill a land that turn, or you don't have a cool spell to cast that turn from a graveyard, maybe one of your opponents do. I mean, very likely somebody has milled a land. If everybody's milling together at once, even off Coram's ability, you're going to hit a land that turn, I think. And then there has to be a cool spell somebody has milled that you get to cast. So that's a really good card advantage on a 4-mana creature that has the potential of one-shotting, if at least two-shotting people. And it also mills, so it generates a card advantage itself. It kind of does it all for 4 mana. It seems exceptionally power crept. I don't know, this seems silly. But yeah, it's very powerful. Yeah, Coram just kind of does it all, doesn't he? Like, he attacks, he does a self-milling, and he generates his own card advantage, and he also makes himself bigger by the milling. It's good. It's just this is a very good commander. Very strong. I don't know. For me, I kind of, it's almost too easy. It seems too easy to just do. So it's not like my favorite. I acknowledge that it's a very strong commander and kind of exciting, but like, not exciting to me because, I don't know, just generically easy to pull off, I guess. That's no hoops really to jump through on this one. Next, we have the face commander of the same precon, the Jund Lurgoyf deck. This is Disa the Reckless, or Jisa, I don't know. This is a 5-mana Jund legendary creature human scout. It's a 5/6, and whenever a Lurgoyf permanent card is put into your graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, put it onto the battlefield, and then whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a Tarmogoyf token. It's interesting that when I mentioned what a Tarmogoyf was in the previous video when I was covering the precon, some people were like, oh my god, you're explaining it, but it was only like 10 years ago, and god, I'm old. And then other people were like, oh, thanks for the explanation, I'm new to Magic. So it's like, to explain what a Tarmogoyf token is, oh, they actually have the Tarmogoyf token, so you can check it out here. Their mana cost is 2 mana, 1 and a green. It's a Lurgoyf, and its power is equal to the number of cards in all graveyards, and its toughness is equal to that number plus 1. You're basically just making an original Tarmogoyf, but as a token form. This card used to be a powerhouse in Modern over a decade ago. And was like the linchpin of Jund decks. And basically, I believe the precon's secondary act, not only just to lure in new players, but its secondary purpose is to try and lure in basically older Modern players from a decades ago who might still have like their blinged out Jund decks, and they're just telling people, hey, you can still play those Jund decks that haven't been viable in many, many years. Bring them off the shelf. You can actually use your Tarmogoyfs as tokens now for Disa. It's actually super playable in Commander. Join us in Commander, won't you? And you know what? I think that's kind of smart marketing. You're trying to appeal to older players who might not be playing Commander. So that's a cool way of trying to onboard people into Commander, not just new players, but also old players, old boomers, which is fun. All right, so Disa herself is, well, very powerful. So not only is her secondary ability incredibly strong, like it doesn't even require you to attack with Lurgoyfs. It doesn't even require you to deal combat damage with Lurgoyfs. It's whenever your creatures are dealing damage to players. So per opponent, you can make 1 Tarmogoyf per opponent. Maximum per attack. If you're dealing combat damage to them, if you have 3 opponents, that's up to 3 Tarmogoyf tokens every single combat. That's really strong. They're going to be showing up onto the battlefield as like 4/5s or 5/6s. It's not nothing. But her first ability is even more powerful. Whenever a Lurgoyf is put into the graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, you put it on the battlefield. So let's say you mill a Lurgoyf, or you discard a Lurgoyf, or funnily enough, if you cast a Lurgoyf and somebody counters it, it doesn't matter. They're all just going to go back onto the battlefield anyway. So let's say, for example, you just cast like a very innocent looking Faithless Looting. You draw 2, you discard 2. Oh, you had 2 Lurgoyfs, you discard 2 Lurgoyfs for 2 mana. Yeah, they go directly onto the battlefield with Disa, and basically Faithless Looting just drew you 2 cards and put 2 Lurgoyfs on the battlefield. Like that's nutty, right? Like that's really good. And then there's obviously also instant win combos with Disa that you can pull off rather easily. If you cast, like, I believe it's Morality Shift, which exchanges your library with your graveyard, you just take your library and you shove it in the graveyard. You're going to be milling a whole bunch of Lurgoyfs in the process, and you'll put all those Lurgoyfs onto the battlefield with Disa, one of them being Pyrogoyf, which will deal damage equal to the Lurgoyf's power to any target, and that just machine gun downs all your opponents with a spectacular burn spell that your opponents can't really do too much about. I mean, it's happening all at instant speed for them, so they really need to have like a Path to Exile or like a Swords to Plasters or something like that in response to the Morality Shift on Disa, or else they just lose. So that's incredibly strong. Now, the downside, though, of going for Lurgoyfs is there's simply not a lot of them. In fact, in Commander in Jund Colors, there are only 13 cards that are Lurgoyfs. Half of them aren't that great. But I mean, they're all playable. You're going to put all of them into your deck, but half of them aren't that great. The new ones are good, obviously, but there's not that many to work with. The real thing that you have to be doing with Disa is you run the Lurgoyfs that you like, obviously, but you're going to be tutoring up basically 2 cards. Maskwood Nexus turns all your creatures into Lurgoyfs, no matter where they are in either the library or the hand, the battlefield, doesn't matter. They're always considered Lurgoyfs no matter where they are. And then I think same thing with Conspiracy. I think it basically does the same thing. It's just that Maskwood Nexus is a little bit more efficient at it, can generate Lurgoyfs too, and is also more mana efficient. It's just cheaper to cast. So that's basically what you need to be doing with Disa. There's 13 Lurgoyfs. So there's really just not that many to work with. So your best bet is to tutor up like the Maskwood Nexus or the Conspiracy, turn all your other creatures into Lurgoyfs, and then you're really popping off. Then it's actually broken. The other thing you can do to boost the ranks of the Lurgoyfs is adding Changelings, which count as all creature types. And there's a couple that are obviously very strong. Black Market Connections is a staple. Bloodline Pretender is solid. It gets very large very quickly. Chameleon Colossus. Changeling Outcast is really good because, you know, you deal damage to one opponent, you make a Tarmogoyf. That's quite nice. So yeah, a lot of these are actually quite playable. And they can supplement the serious lack of Lurgoyfs. So you're probably going to go like half Lurgoyfs, half Changelings, Maskwood Nexus, and Conspiracy, and then this is actually quite strong. But if you're like a Lurgoyf purist and you want to run cards that literally have Lurgoyf written on the card type, then you might be kind of sad that there's not that many to work with. So I don't know. For Disa, I really like her. I think she is obviously great as a commander, and if you start building the precon, upgrading the precon, she becomes incredibly strong, and there are going to be combos that just win the game by just putting a crap ton of Lurgoyfs on the battlefield all at once with Disa's ability, and then you just win. But I am not a Jund boomer. I do not have nostalgia for like 2007 Modern or whatever. It wasn't 2007. Maybe I'm being a little bit too hard. I think it was like 2011, 2012 Modern. No nostalgia for that. So it's not really aimed at me, and I'm not really a Jund player either. So it's great. I'm just not super hyped for it personally. Though I will say, I think this style of commander is more appealing to me than the last two, Coram and Cayth, because it's focusing on a specific thing at the very least. If Lurgoyfs had more cards to work with, then it would be even more enticing. But I do like that it's like, oh, you're taking a creature type that historically hasn't really done too much in Commander, and we're making it suddenly very viable. And I think that's actually really cool, and it's a more interesting design space for me personally than Cayth or Coram, even though, you know, it might be a little bit too narrow in this regard because it's literally just 13 Lurgoyfs, but maybe we'll have more at some point, and then Disa will be more and more exciting to me. All right, next we have an Eladamri, Korvecdal. That's a 3 mana legendary creature elf warrior. It's a 3/3. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. You can pay green and tap Eladamri and then 2 more untapped creatures you control to reveal a card from your hand or top of your library. And if you reveal a creature card this way, you may put it onto the battlefield, activate only during your turn. So Eladamri is obviously a payoff for your creature heavy deck. You want to be super heavy on creatures. I think like at least 40 creatures in your deck, or just less creatures, but then a lot of top deck manipulation to put creatures on top of your library whenever you need to with Eladamri. But basically, early game, it's an early game creature. It lets you generate a lot of card advantage by casting spells from the top of your library. And then on top of that, it also acts as a pseudo Elvish Piper, where you don't have to spend that much mana, but you have to tap essentially 3 creatures down to put a creature card from your hand or top of the library directly onto the battlefield, which is very spicy. So early game, you're just, you know, casting some creatures off the top, you're generating card advantage, and then later on in the game, you're actually just cheating out those big creatures for free. And also those creatures don't need to have haste or anything, so you can literally like play creatures from the top of your library. You can do like typical elf ball things where you're casting small creatures off the top of your library, then immediately tap them with Eladamri, and then put a big creature onto the battlefield. So that's really good. Like, this card is really good card advantage, and then mana advantage, I guess, because you're putting stuff for free. You can only activate during your turn, so you can't do sneaky stuff on your opponent's turn, but I think that's more than enough value for a 3-drop. Definitely more than enough value for a 3-drop. Now, where would I run this? I think this is probably just in the 99. Like, this is a strong card as your commander, and it's probably a really good leader for like an elf ball strategy. It's just that there's a lot of competition for elf ball in the command zone, and this one is generic enough that you don't have to go elf ball. Like, you could make it elf ball, you could put it in your command zone, but I feel like if you put it in the 99 of any deck that cares very heavily on creature, has like a critical mass of creatures of like 40 or more, this is going to be just a really good value engine. All right, so Eladamri, great in the 99. Okay, next we have Emrakul, the World Anew. This is a 12 mana colorless legendary creature Eldrazi. It's a 12/12, and when you cast this spell, gain control of all creatures target player controls. It has flying, protection from spells, and from permanents that were cast this turn. And when Emrakul leaves the battlefield, sacrifice all creatures you control. And it has a madness cost. You can pay 6 colorless mana instead of the 12 mana when you're discarding it. So this is a spicy Eldrazi Titan. For 12 mana is a ton of mana, but you get to just like yoink all creatures out of player controls, and they can never really get it back, right? If they do manage to kill Emrakul, which is very difficult to do, you basically need a board wipe. When they do kill Emrakul, you just sacrifice all the creatures. The downside is that if you had other creatures on the battlefield, you have to sacrifice those too, so not just the creatures you stole. But still, like, you just yoink an entire person's board. This is a flying 12/12, and it has protection from spells, so it's very hard to just remove this with just spells. Like, you can't target it, and permanents that were cast this turn. So you have to have like sacrifice effects. You have to have a board wipe, most likely a board wipe. And yeah, it's a huge threat on the battlefield. Does this go into the command zone? Does this go in the 99? I think this one's very clear that you want to put it in the 99, because paying 12 mana for this effect is like, it's worth it, but it's not like super exciting because 12 mana is just a lot. It's just a lot of mana. However, if you do manage to madness it in the right deck, I think it's definitely much more exciting. Like, if you put this in a madness deck, I don't think most madness decks can actually pay 6 colorless mana, but if it can, this is just like backbreaking. This is insane. And then you could like do it at instant speed too on your opponent's turn. Like, imagine they swing at you with everything, and then you just madness out Emrakul. You have a 12 on the battlefield, and you yoink somebody else's board state. So now you have just a huge army of blockers. Oh boy, what a blowout. Yeah, this card is super fun, but I think it goes in the 99. I think even in the decks it goes in the 99 of, I think it's more like you want to put it in like the colorless Eldrazi deck, like Ulalek or Zuladok, which is the colorless version of it. You want to put it in those, and those probably can't madness it out very often. Like you might be able to with like a land that like draws and discards or whatever. But yeah, I don't think it's really good as a commander. I guess you could build it as a commander, but I'm more excited about it in the 99 of other decks. Okay, Emrakul, great in the 99. Next, we've got the first appearance of Tamio's husband, Genku Future Shaper. This is a 4-mana Azorius, a legendary creature, Moonfolk Wizard. It's a 2/5, and whenever another non-token permanent you control leaves the battlefield, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn, create a token with those characteristics. So it's either a 2/2 white Fox of Vigilance, a 1/2 blue Moonfolk with flying, or a 1/1 a black rat with lifelink, and you can pay 5 mana to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So this is kind of like the Talrand, or yeah, just like it's basically the Talrand of non-token permanents leaving the battlefield, I guess, which is a bigger hoop than just casting like an instant or sorcery, I would say. And the creatures you get are kind of worse. You get instead of like 2/2 flying drakes, you're getting like a 1/2 Moonfolk with flying, which is fine if you're like going for like a kindred deck. Like if you're going for like Moonfolk, then having your commander have access to a secondary color with white, and then making Moonfolk passively is nice, but like it's not great. And then 5 mana, putting a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control is also fine. But it's a lot worse than if this was like in green, because, you know, mana's tight and you're bouncing stuff back to your hand. Yeah, it's all right. I think this is like kind of cute with old school Moonfolk. Old school Moonfolk were really bad. They're from original Kamigawa. Almost all of them are terrible. And they all have activated abilities that usually require you to spend mana and then also return a land you control from your battlefield back to your hand to do it. And they're all like mid. They're not very good. I still love them. I've played Moonfolk a bunch of times on Commander Clash. I even won with every single, at the time, legal Moonfolk in my deck. And people somehow forget about that. They always like, oh, Tomer didn't play Moonfolk in his Moonfolk deck. I did. I played every single one that was legal at the time in Commander. There was only one that was banned. It was like one that like counter stuff or whatever. I played all of them, and then I won with it. So naysayers, I don't know. I feel like this is like, what's like the reverse of Mandela effect? Like people have forgotten this thing, and then they keep gaslighting me that I haven't done it. I don't know why. Anyway, tangent over. Genku can be a cute commander for that. I like his best thing, basically, for old Moonfolk is that he gives you access to white, and that's kind of key, because if you're bouncing all your lands back to your hand, you need ways to put them back on the battlefield, and white is really good at that because it enables all the catch-up ramp, right? Like you have your Weather Wayfarer, you got your Knight of the White Orchid, you got good stuff in white for getting back onto the battlefield, which blue does not by itself. Okay, so with all that said, I think he's in the poop category. Like the requirement's kind of big. I guess he works better with Blink, but then like the payoff is you could only make like 3 of these per turn, and they're not very good tokens. And then the activated ability is kind of bad. Yeah, it's on the poop category. Yeah, it's poop. Okay, then we have our second flip walker of the cycle. This is Grist, Voracious Larva. This is a green legendary creature insect. It has Death Touch. It's a 1/2. And then whenever it or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it entered from your graveyard or you cast it from your graveyard, you may pay 1 green. If you do, exile Grist and return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. And the backside is Grist, the Plague Swarm. It has 3 abilities. It has 3 loyalty, starting loyalty, and then you can give it +1. Create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token, then mill 2 cards. Put a Death Touch counter on the token if a black card was milled this way. And -2, destroy target artifact or enchantment. -6, for each creature in your graveyard, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 1/1 black and green insect. So Grist asks a lot of you. It's a 1 mana planeswalker, which is, I believe, the cheapest planeswalker in existence. But, I mean, is only in a technical sense, right? It starts off as a creature, and then you have to do a very big hoop to actually get it to become a planeswalker. You have to cast it or another creature from the battlefield, or return it some way from the battlefield, from the graveyard to the battlefield, which, you know, black and to an extent green can do many different ways. It's just, it is a hoop. It's kind of hard to do. Harder than the other flip walkers, and that's why it's 1 mana instead of 2 or 3 or whatever. So yeah, it's a significant hoop, but one that Golgari is very capable of doing. And then the backside, it's pretty good. The +1 ability is actually quite good in terms of protecting Grist, and that's like its main thing. You're milling, which is an engine, because this deck is all about, you know, utilizing the graveyard for value. So the +1 ability is benefiting the main theme of the deck, but then it's ideally putting a 1/1 with Death Touch on the battlefield, which is going to be a very good deterrent for potential attackers. Its -2 ability is always going to be pretty relevant in Commander. There's always powerful artifacts or enchantments that need to get rid of, and Grist can do that immediately. The -6 is a long shot. Obviously, it takes a long time for you to get to that, from starting loyalty at 3 and then going up, ticking up every single turn. That's like 4 turns before you can do it. But it is a very powerful effect as well, and probably can win games shortly afterwards. Yeah, I think this card's pretty good. Like, it's exciting as a commander in the concept that this is basically a 1 mana planeswalker that you can put in the command zone, and that's very unique. I just think they did play it pretty safe with this commander, with this creature rather, and like, it's not like doing anything super busted, but it is very cute. I like it. Yeah, I like it. All right, Grist, I'm going to put you as great as commander because I think you are. All right, next up we have Herigast, Erupting Nullkite. This is a 9 mana colorless legendary creature, Eldrazi Dragon, and it has an emerge of 8 mana, 6 and double red, which means you can cast a spell by sacrificing a creature and paying the emerge cost reduced by that creature's mana value. So if you sacrifice like a 6-drop creature to this ability, then you only have to pay 2 red instead of the regular 9 mana that Herigast usually costs. When you cast a spell, you may exile your hand if you do draw 3 cards, which is nice if you have no cards in hand. And it's a 6/6 flyer, and each creature spell you cast has emerge. The emerge cost is equal to its mana cost. All right, Herigast is just cool. I like Eldrazi, I like dragons, and what's more fun than a deck led by a commander that is both Eldrazi and dragon? However, I do think this is much better in the 99 than in the command zone. In the command zone, you can have this really cool, like, big mana creature sneak attack matters sacrifice deck. You like a sneak attack, big high mana value creatures, and then emerge them before you have to sacrifice them at end step or whatever, and then have other big creatures on the battlefield, and that's cute. But I do think it's going to be a lot better in the 99 of decks that are just better at sneak attacking. So the most popular sneak attack commander is Henzi, and I think this is going to be a really nice addition to that, where you can blitz out a big creature and then emerge Herigast, where it was going to die anyway. And then you can continue to just emerge out big creatures as you're blitzing out other creatures. You blitz out a creature, then you sacrifice it to the emerge cost of another big creature, and now it sticks around permanently. Like, that's super fun. The card draw aspect of it is nice. Hopefully you don't have to use it that often, but sometimes you do have like 0 cards in hand, or you have a couple of cards in hand and they're all like lands or whatever, and you're just being land flooded or something like that. Like, the ability is relevant. It is good. It's better than nothing. Personally, I have a Purphoros Bronze Blooded deck, which is also a sneak attack deck. I'm jamming that this dragon into it. It's also kind of a dragon deck. Like, it didn't start as a dragon deck, but now it's slowly becoming a dragon deck. That's kind of cool. And this happens to be a dragon, which is nice. So yeah, Herigast, great in the 99. I think it's really solid in sneak attack decks, which is very narrow, to be fair. It's only good in sneak attack decks, and I can only think of 2 off the top of my head, but it's going to be really good in those decks. All right, Imskir Iron Eater. This is an 8 mana Rakdos legendary creature demon. It's a 5/5 with affinity for artifacts, so it costs 1 less to cast for each artifact you control, so you can cast it for as much as 8 mana or as little as just 2 mana, black and a red, which is very, very powerful. When it enters the battlefield, you draw X cards and you lose X life, where X is half the number of artifacts you control rounded down, and you can pay 4 mana, 3 and a red, sacrifice an artifact. Imskir deals damage equal to the sacrificed mana's artifact mana's value to any target. So Imskir is just a very nice payoff for a Rakdos-y artifact deck. And this could be like a treasure deck, like a Prosper deck. You could jam it in the 99 of a Prosper deck or whatever. But it's also really good as a commander because let's say you're playing Rakdos artifacts, which you don't really see that much in Commander in general, but let's say you're playing Rakdos artifacts, you poop out a whole bunch of artifacts, then you play Imskir for 2 mana and you just refill your hand. You lose a little bit of life, but who cares? But you refill your hand for 2 mana and then it dies, and then you just can cast Imskir for 2 mana again, or like 4 mana or whatever, it's fine. Like that's really good. Just this card just really allows you to go ham with just like barfing out a handful of artifacts, mana rocks or whatever, and then Imskir just reloads you, which is nice. And then its activated ability is nice too. I imagine that's not the primary use of Imskir. Imskir is mostly a 5/5 that allows you to draw a whole bunch of cards, but sometimes it's always nice you just throw a giant artifact at a problem and win the game that way. And there's at least one artifact that works really well with this. I think it's like Tomb of the Spirit Dragon or something like that. It's like, if it goes to the graveyard, you take an extra turn. Like, obviously that's going to be a staple of Imskir. You just throw that at somebody's face, deal a whole bunch of damage, and take an extra turn. Easy peasy. But yeah, I'm very stoked for playing Imskir in the command zone. He's also going to be very good in the 99 of any artifact deck that is in Rakdos colors, which is admittedly not that many. But yeah, it's just really good. It's really good value. Like, who can complain about a 2-drop, essentially a 2-drop, 5/5, ETB, draw a whole bunch of cards, and then also chuck artifacts at people's faces. Like, this is great. I love it. All right, Imskir, I'm going to put you at the top of grade as commander because I believe he deserves to be there. Next, we've got the secondary commander of the Simic Lands deck. This is Jyoti, Moag Ancient. This is a 4-mana Simic legendary creature elemental. It's a 2/4, and when it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 green forest dried land creature token for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone of this game. So if Jyoti is your commander, and you cast it for the first time, you make 1 Forest Dryad. But then if it dies or goes to the command zone for any sort of reason, and you cast it the second time, you get to make 2 Forest Dryads, and it's cumulative like that. And then at the beginning of each combat, land creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is Jyoti's power. So this is a Simic Lands deck, which is something that is incredibly popular in Commander and incredibly powerful in Commander, one of the most powerful and popular archetypes in the game. But this one actually has a twist to it where it's not just focused on lands in general, like you play a land, you draw a card. This one is focused on combat, specifically land creature combat, which is much more exciting to me because if you are in Simic Lands, the only thing I pray for you is a quick death as you're just drawing cards and ramping, drawing cards and ramping, and drawing cards and ramping. I just want you to end things, and Jyoti does a good job of that if you're animating creatures. There is a lot of ways to turn your lands into creatures, a lot of ways to do so. My personal favorite, though, is Sylvan Awakening. It just turns all your lands into creatures, and they have Reach, Indestructible, and Haste. And then with Jyoti on the battlefield, they get at the very least +2/+2, but if you have any ways of pumping up Jyoti further than that, you get to have a huge army that probably just wins you the game. Now, in terms of competition, I would say the other like lands animating creature smashy deck that I like quite a bit is Joriel, Voice of Zhalfir. That was one I did a budget brew on for like $25, and it is quite powerful, but it focuses basically on one creature and smashing face with that one big creature. And then the other one that I like quite a bit is Tatyova, Steward of Tides. It gives all your land creatures flying. It doesn't pump them up really big or anything, but it also animates lands too if you have 7 more lands. Both of those are very nice, but personally speaking, I like Jyoti the most. Whenever you're casting it from the command zone, you're already ramping because you're making a land creature token each time you're casting it. And then also its overrun effect is just incredibly powerful. And that's like a lot of value for a 4-drop. It doesn't do any of like the broken, Simic Lands things where it's like, oh, whenever you play a land, you get to draw a card. Oh, whenever you play a land, you get to play another land. Oh, whenever you draw a card, you get to play a land. None of that nonsense. So I guess like 99% of the Simic land people out there are going to skim over this immediately, which is disappointing. But I understand what they want. They want degeneracy, and I just want the game to end. So I much prefer this. So for that reason alone, I very much like Jyoti. I do not like playing Simic land decks. I do not like them. They are the opposite of my style, which is combat. I like ending the game. I'm old, I'm tired, I want to take a nap. And Jyoti allows me to take a nap. So you know what? I really appreciate Jyoti. I really appreciate Jyoti. I wish all Simic land people, they just became Jyoti players, because then they could do all this stuff in the 99. They can, ramp, which will draw them cards, which will let them ramp, which will let them draw cards, all that stuff. You could do all of that in the 99, but then in the command zone, you end the game. You cast your commander, you have a bunch of big lands, they become even bigger with Jyoti, and then we die, and then we can shuffle up and play. That's all I beg for. So yeah, I hope Jyoti becomes the most popular commander of all time even. You know what? Most popular Simic lands commander. You know what? I'm gonna put Jyoti at the very top. At the top of my favorites. You know why? Because at the end of the video, a lot of people just like skim or don't even look at the video itself. They just want to see the list, right? They want to see the list. So if I put Jyoti at the very top of the Tomer favorites, then the people who don't watch the video and they just want to see the end result, then they'll be like, oh, this Jyoti must be very strong if Tomer put it as its favorite. I guess I should make a Jyoti deck. And then we'll have more Jyoti players and less AC players. So yeah, Jyoti's at the top. Let's see if my plan works. All right, we got another Eldrazi Titan. This is Kozilek, the Broken Reality. This is a 9-mana colorless legendary creature Eldrazi. It's a 9/9, and when you cast this spell, up to 2 target players each manifest 2 cards from their hands. For each card manifested this way, you draw a card. And then other colorless creatures you control get +3/+2. So I've been hearing talks that Kozilek is bad. Like in terms of the Eldrazi Titans, this one is like the worst. And I ask you, why? For 9 mana, you get a 9/9 on the battlefield, and then it also allows you to basically like manifest 2 cards from your hand, and you'll get to draw 2 cards. But you also get to choose another player if you want to manifest 2 cards from their hands, and then you get to draw 2 cards and 2 additional cards. So you could draw 2 cards, or you could draw 4 cards. The choice is yours, and that's nice. And also, people are like, well, I don't want to help out my opponents. Well, manifested cards are not necessarily helping your opponents, because if you like choose somebody who has 2 cards remaining in their hand, and it's like mid to late game, chances are those cards are not creatures, and you can only flip up creatures if they're manifested. Otherwise, you have to like blink them or bounce them or something to actually flip them back up. Chances are, if you're playing against an opponent mid to late game and they're sandbagging like 1 or 2 cards, those are probably interaction pieces. They're probably combo pieces. There's things your opponents do not want to put on the battlefield just yet. And if you like make them manifest their wrath involuntarily, and also like maybe put like their counter spell involuntarily onto the battlefield, they're gonna be sad. You actually hindered them quite a bit. You made them cash in their Wrath of God or whatever into a measly 2/2, and you drew a card off it as well. So I think that cast trigger is actually quite good. And then the Anthem ability is just very strong. Like if you're going for a go wide strategy with colorless creatures, it could be Kadena, for example. You could be going full morph or cloak or whatever. You could run this as your top end. You could also just run this in your Eldrazi Scion or Spawn deck too. And this is your top end that just gives them a huge buff and you just start killing them that way. So yeah, I don't think this card is bad at all. I think the cast trigger is greatly misunderstood. It's much better than people give it credit for. Obviously, it's more narrow though. You want to be in a deck that has a bunch of colorless creatures. So that's either Morph or that's like Eldrazi tokens. Outside of that, do you want to play a 9-mana 9/9 that can draw you between 2 and 4 cards? Honestly, that's not even that bad. That's not that bad. It's not the best, but it's not that bad. Yeah, I like it a lot. Is this a commander or is this part of the 99 though? I think it's part of the 99 because then it gives you access to more colors. That's basically it. Okay, Kozilek, you are not poop. You are great in the 99. Perfect for Pride Week, we've got Kudo, King Among Bears. This is a 2-mana Selesnya legendary creature bear. It's a 2/2, and other creatures have base power and toughness 2/2 and are bears in addition to their other types. So this is a buff for your 1/1 creatures, or a nerf for all your opponents bigger than 2/2 creatures, essentially. And it turns them into bears, which I guess can be good. I don't know. Very medium, I guess, in most cases. But it could be a built around. I don't know. Is this card good? It doesn't make them lose like their activated abilities or triggered abilities or anything. I kind of wish it just like mass bared everybody where they just like lose all card types. Like just imagine if this was like a 2-mana humility. That's what I want. Am I crazy? Am I the bad person? Am I turning into Crim? I read this card initially and I was like, wow, for 2 mana, I got to turn all my creatures, everybody's creatures into 2/2 bears with no other card text. That's amazing. That's the game I want to play. No, it's not that good. Or that bad, I guess. I don't know. It just makes things 2/2s and makes them bears as well. It's all right. It's fine. It might be in the 99 as like a hate piece. Maybe. I don't know. It's fine. Yeah, I don't know what to do with Kudo. I thought it was a humility. It's not. I'm undecided. It's going to go into the undecided territory. Okay, we come to the most busted legendary creature in the entire set. This is Nadu, Winged Wisdom. This is a 3-mana Simic, of course it is. 3/4 legendary creature bird wizard, flying, and creatures you control have whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a lane card, put it onto the battlefield, otherwise put it into your hand. This ability triggers only twice this turn. Now, only twice this turn is a bit of a reach because it's only twice per turn per creature. So if you have 4 creatures on the battlefield, for example, each of them can trigger this ability twice per turn. So that's 8 triggers per turn instead of just like, oh, only twice per turn, period. This card is nuts. This card is silly. Like if you're playing it straight, this is a 3-mana 3/4 flyer, which, oh my god, that's big stats for a bird. And then whenever you're targeting it with any spell or ability, you get to either draw a card, or if it's a land, you immediately ramp. So it's a Risen Reef. It's a Risen Reef on crack. That can be in the command zone, and it's like 10 times better because it doesn't require like an elemental going onto the battlefield. Just whatever a creature's targeted by anything that it triggers. It's great. So it's at worst case, it's bananas because it's drawing you a card every single time you or your opponents are targeting something. Worst case or best case, it's like just insane ramp plus card draw, which is blah. And then obviously, if you've heard of Nadu before, you probably know that it breaks anything that has like a free ability to target. The 2 easiest ones, the single best one, is Shuko or Shaku or something. I don't know. It's on the screen right now. It's a 1-mana equipment. You can equip for 0 mana. So let's say you have Nadu and any other creature on the battlefield. You pay 1 mana, you put the equipment on the battlefield, and then for 0 mana, you can equip it to Nadu, and then move the equipment from Nadu to the other creature, and then move it back and forth, and you trigger both Nadu and that creature 2 times each turn. So that's 4 triggers for 1 mana. Draw 4 cards, and as many of those cards are lands, they go directly onto the battlefield. Absolutely bananas. Busted. Broken. Also, those lands enter the battlefield untapped for some reason. They're not even tapped. I don't know why. And then also, if you want to kill Nadu, if you want to like swords it or whatever, people were like, oh, it's busted, but just run more removal. Oh yeah, I'm running my removal. I run a Swords of Plowshares. I target the Nadu. At the very worst, they get to draw a card off it. So now they have 2 for 1 me. And then at the best case scenario for them, absolute worst case for me, is they hit a land, and now not only did I give them a card, I also ramped them into their second Nadu cast. So I helped pay their command tax. Oh boy, this card is silly. Obviously, I'm going to be making a budget brew on this because obviously it's so easy to break. So if you're going to break it, at least do it with a $25 budget so you can smash, like $200 decks or whatever, or $500. I'm going to do it. I just don't feel good about myself doing it. Hopefully I can use this hilariously broken card for good, for the good of the budget. But yeah, ugh. I feel like I'm gonna vomit every single time I reread the card. Ugh. Simic value, draw cards, ramp, repeat. Obviously, this is great as a commander. I don't like it. I'm not happy it exists. I would like to talk to whoever designed this card, and I would like to talk to whoever approved the design of the card. But nonetheless, I have to admit it is a great commander. And have fun. If you like this stuff, have fun. All right, we move from like the most busted Simic commander to one of like the weakest. This is Omo, Queen of Vesuva. This is a 3-mana Simic 1/5 legendary creature, shapeshifter noble. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, put an everything counter on each of up to 1 target land and up to 1 target creature. Each land with an everything counter on it is every land type in addition to its other types, and each non-land creature with an everything counter on it is every creature type. Now, this was the legendary creature that I was by far the most excited for when it was first spoiled. It was the one that I was looking forward to the most out of the entire set. Finally, we got a Simic commander that isn't about making lands and ramping, drawing cards, making land drops, repeating. It's a little bit different. It's a bit tricksy. It's very changeling-esque because you're putting everything counters that count as all creature types and all land types. My favorite deck of all time, still is my favorite deck of all time, is my changeling deck. So obviously this card was made for me, right? I was super, super excited about it until I realized that the everything counters don't do anything by themselves. Unlike, let's say, a menace counter or a lifelink counter, those are intrinsic properties to the counter themselves. Whereas with the everything counters, they literally do nothing unless Omo is on the battlefield. Omo gives them those properties, but only when Omo is on the battlefield. So you can put a bunch of everything counters on all your stuff and your deck will be doing really cool things. They're going to count as all creature types, so you can benefit from all different types of creature lords. You can have lands be all land types, so they can benefit from like deserts and gates and all that cool land synergy. So you can do creature synergies, land synergies, mix and match however you choose. The world's your oyster. Until Omo gets removed, right? If Omo's not on the battlefield, then the entire concept doesn't work. It's as if you've done nothing. You've done literally nothing, and then you have to recast Omo and then hope it doesn't die again, essentially. I don't like that. I admit you're in green and blue, so hopefully you're going to have between those two colors, green's insane ramp potential and blue's great way of protecting Omo. Hopefully between the two, you'll be able to keep Omo on the battlefield, but it just kind of really bums me out that also this is not even a changeling. It's not even all creature types by itself. It has to have an everything counter on it. Ugh. I just don't like that. Like if the worst case scenario happens and Omo's just not on the battlefield, which I mean your opponents are going to be very incentivized to do that. Then your deck, everything you did up to this point did not matter. I do not like it. I do not like the design. I'm very disappointed. I was so excited for this commander. I'm still a little bit excited for it. Like, I think the precon's super interesting to me, but I just, such distaste that the everything counter doesn't do the thing as I thought it would. And I think it should. I think it should get like eroded. Everything counters should just do what they imply. It's so silly that Omo has to grant the counter what it's doing. Like, would it have been broken if that was not the case? Like, I would have much preferred if Omo only put 1 counter on something instead of 2 every single time it triggers, except then that thing is permanent, right? Like, instead of right now that it's 2, and then if Omo leaves the battlefield, then it does nothing. Like, ugh, I hate that. I don't like it. So Omo, Queen of Vesuva, oh boy. Like, I'm still excited about it, but I'm so mad at how it's designed. But I'm excited about it, but I'm so mad. I'm undecided. I'm going to put it in the undecided category. Like, I want to like it. I really want to. I'm the demographic for this shenanigans. I am. But, oh, wizards, you hurt me. So next up, we have the quote-unquote fixed version of Light Paws. This is Pearl Ear. Pearl Ear. How did I say that? That was weird. Pearl Ear Imperial Advisor. This is a 3-mana white legendary creature, Fox Advisor. It has a lifelink, and enchantment spells you cast have infinity for auras. And whenever you cast an aura spell that targets a modified permanent you control, draw a card. So this is basically literally what like Light Paws should have been, honestly. It's 3 mana instead of 2. It's a little bit of a bigger body as lifelink. That's very irrelevant, but basically it makes your enchantment spells cheaper the more auras you have on the battlefield. And whenever you're targeting the same thing that's already modified with an aura, you get to draw a card, which is kind of similar to what Light Paws is doing. Light Paws essentially draws you a card, but instead of drawing you a card, it like tutors up a card from your library, the exact one you want, of the same mana value, and puts it directly on the battlefield. So it's card advantage, mana advantage, just like Purrleal, but like to an insane degree that also has tutoring the exact card you want at the same time. And it's even cheaper, it's even better mana advantage, and even better draw, because it just goes directly on the battlefield. It's silly. It was a silly design. It was bad. It was a bad design. Daniel, if you're listening to the bad design, did not like, do not agree. But Purrleal is like, if you liked Light Paws and you wanted to play toned down Light Paws so that it works in a play group that isn't high powered, Purrleal can do the same thing. It fulfills the exact same role, but it's just fair. It's balanced. So you could literally just like, if you have a Light Paws deck and you can't play it anymore because it's just way too strong for your group, but you like it, and it's just sitting there on the shelf collecting dust, and you're like, gee williker, I wish I could play a Light Paws sometime. Good news! You could literally take out Light Paws, put it in the 99 even, and just run Purrleal instead in the command zone, and the deck will be the exact same. It will be worse, but it will be the exact same. You don't have to make any more adjustments to it, and then you can run it with your friends, and you can play it again. So good news, people who have Light Paws and feel bad about playing it. You can play Purrleal, and it's going to be much better. It'll be fine, I promise. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? So yeah, compared to Light Paws, it's obviously way worse, but I think that's intentional. I think this is literally just a fixed Light Paws for people who want a fixed Light Paws. I think that is a very valid design space, and I applaud Wizards of the Coast for actually doing it. I think it's not going to be popular, but for people who do play the popular option and then no longer get to play it because it's too strong, Purrleal is there. And also, my goodness, it's so hard to say Purrleal quickly. I can't. Purrleal. I can't. It's awful. Ugh. Next, we have the cutest commander of the entire set. It's Felia, Exuberant Shepherd. This is a 2-mana white legendary creature dog. It's a 2/2 with flash, and whenever it attacks, exile up to one other target non-land permanent at the beginning of the next end step. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it entered under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Felia. Now, as a commander card, this is on the weaker end. I feel like it's made for like maybe modern play or like, I don't know, some sort of 1v1 format, because it's a 2/2 creature that in order to blink requires you to attack with it, and it doesn't have any evasion, and will trade unfavorably with a lot of potential blockers, which kind of sucks. But at the same time, look at the art. The art is really sweet. It's a corgi. I love it. And that's the most important thing. It's the best boy. It's the cutest doggo. And that's all I can really say about it. It's basically like, mechanically, if you were ignoring the fact that it was an adorable corgi, it's like a bad Brago, like an awful Brago. And I wouldn't really recommend it in most decks. Maybe like Asperia or something to just like, not Asperia. What's the one that has flash? Ephara. Maybe an Ephara because it's a 2/2 of flash. Like, I guess it's fine. Or in a deck that like will always give it evasion, then it's good. But outside of that, it's like a bad Brago. But more importantly though, it's a cute corgi, so it automatically is the best card ever. All right, I love corgis. I don't even care about the card text. I'm just putting it in the Tomer favorites. I'm not taking any questions at this time. Next, we've got Flage, Titan of Fire's Fury. So this is the Elder Giant for Boros. It's a 3-mana Boros, a legendary creature, Elder Giant. It's a 6/6, and when it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. And whenever Flage enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage to any target, and you gain 3 life, and it has a escape cost of double red, double white, so 4 mana total. Exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. So this is a 3-mana, what's it called? Lightning Helix, which is not very good. But, as we know from the other Elder Giant that we've seen before, The fact that you can escape it, and then it's like a 6/6 on the battlefield that does a lightning helix every single time it's ETBing or attacking, makes it a lot better. It makes it very, very good when you're attaching it onto a creature that's actually on the battlefield. Is this card as good as Uro? Obviously not, and that's probably a good thing. You cannot beat the draw cards, put lands onto the battlefield gameplay, especially when it gains you life on top. I don't know, it's so silly. So silly. But Flage is fine. It's good. It's fine. It's good in the decks that are like, I guess, very graveyard heavy. If you can mill a lot of cards and then pay for the escape cost is quite good. If you have any ways of like, in response to its sacrifice trigger, like phasing it out, for example, that's very strong too. There was like the new gate that just came out that works very well with it. Talon Gate obviously doesn't work as well with Uro because Uro could put it onto the battlefield for free, and you actually have to pay like 4 mana with the Talon Gates to actually do that little combo. But whatever. I'm just saying in general, it could be good. All right, I'll be honest. Maybe it's not even, the juice is not worth the squeeze. I don't know. I'm just going to put in undecided. You let me know if it's better or worse. I don't know. All right, we got another flip walker for you. It's Ral Monsoon Mage. This is a 2-mana red, a legendary creature human wizard. It's a 1/3. It says instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell during your turn, you flip a coin. If you lose the flip, Ral deals 1 damage to you. And if you win the flip, you may exile Ral. If you do, return him onto the battlefield transformed under his owner's control. And then the backside is the Planeswalker's 2 starting loyalty. It has, when it enters the battlefield with an additional loyal counter on him for each instant and sorcery spell you cast this turn. It has a +1 ability until your next turn. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Plus -2. It deals 2 damage divided as you choose to among 1 or 2 targets. Draw a card if you control blue permanent other than Ral. And then -8. Exile the top 8 cards of your library. You may cast instant and sorcery spells from among them this turn without paying their mana costs. So Ral is quite literally its Storm, right? Like, you just want to be casting as many instants and sorceries as possible to fuel Ral. Ral gives you a big discount on casting them because they all cost 1 less. And then eventually he's going to transform into Ral. The more spells you've casted that turn, the better. Ideally, you want to be casting at least 6 before you actually transform him. And even transforming him is kind of a gamble because you have to flip a coin when you're doing so. That's kind of ouchies. But if you flip him over and you can immediately -8 him, you're probably going to win the game. You've probably stormed out enough successfully that his -8 ability, which is basically a Mind's Desire, allows you to hopefully close out the game by casting, maybe like 4 or so extra instant or sorcery spells. It's not as good as Mind's Desire. It only allows you to cast instant sorcery spells of the top 8, so you're gonna whiff on lands, obviously. And then if there's anything else in your deck that's not instant sorcery, you're gonna whiff on those too. But you'll get some amount of value. So maybe it doesn't actually win you the game. Whatever. It's a cool commander. You play a bunch of instant sorceries, you flip them over, and then on the backside, you continue doing your Spellslinger discount. The -2 is kind of bleh. It's a cute Electrolyze reference. I like it. And the -8 is quite strong. And you can get there pretty realistically if you do storm off beforehand. Yeah, it's not like busted or anything. I think that's like the case with all of these flipwalkers, like in the command zone or in the 9/9 or in like commander decks in general. They're probably better suited in modern 1v1, honestly. In Commander, they're all suffering the same issues of the Planeswalker issues that I talked about with Ajani, where like they just don't scale up well in multiplayer. But I mean, the front side is like totally serviceable. It's like just a nice little mana discount for your instant sorcery spells. You don't even need to flip him for it to be good. Obviously, when you do flip him though, you get even more value slowly but surely, which is nice. Yeah, he's all right. He's pretty good. Would I want him in the command zone? No, I think he's a little bit, he doesn't offer enough for a command zone slot, I think. But in the 99 of basically any Izzet Spellslinger deck, I'm happy to run him just for his front side, honestly. Just 2 mana, instant sorcery spells cost 1 less to cast. That's playable. And then the rest is gravy, baby. So yeah, I'll put Ral in great in the 99. Like, he's not like amazing or anything. He's just like another 2-mana Baral type figure for Izzet Spellslinger. But he's good. I like him. Next, we've got Roshin, Roaring Prophet. This is a 4-mana Gruul, legendary creature, giant shaman. It's a 4/4, and when it enters the battlefield, mill 6 cards. You may put an X card in its mana cost from among them into your hand, and then you can tap it, reveal any number of cards of X in their mana cost in your hand. Add 2 colorless for each card revealed this way. Spend this mana only to cast spells that contain X. So this is another X Matters commander. It's a callback to the previous Roshin, and it is good. I like it. Is it going to be better in the command zone versus the 99? Well, there isn't that much competition for Roshin in the command zone for like Gruul-based X Matters decks, but there is one in particular that's very good. So Magus Lucia Kane is kind of like the de facto X commander. I guess there's also Zexara that focuses like on Hydras and stuff, but I think the better one is Magus. It gives you access to blue, so even more X spells to work with, and obviously just having access to blue is just an upgrade, I guess. And then her tap ability, you can add 2 colorless mana, not like a whole bunch, but just 2. But then you get to copy the spell you cast off of it, which I think is probably just better than Roshin's. I get to make a bunch of colorless mana instead, probably. So yeah, Roshin, I think, is a good commander. It's a fine commander. However, I think the Magus Lucia Kane kind of just overlaps entirely with what Roshin is doing. I don't think Roshin does anything different than what Magus does. You get access to 1 extra color. You're also about X spells, and it's not like specific types of X spells, it's just any type of X spell. But Magus just does it better. So I think Roshin just shows up in the 99 and Magus decks, honestly. There's also Zexara. I forget what it's doing. I am too lazy to look it up, but it's going to be on the screen when I'm editing it. So there you go. All right, so Roshin is great in the 99 of specifically 1 commander. Next, we've got the face commander of the Jeskai Energy deck, the latest energy deck, not the Fallout one that came out a couple months ago that was also Jeskai Energy. This is a new one for Modern Horizons 3. It's also Jeskai Energy. I don't know why they're back-to-back. Don't ask Wizards, not me. Anyway, it's Satya, Aether Flux Genius. It's a 4-mana Jeskai legendary creature, human artificer. It's a 3/5 with menace, and whenever it attacks, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of up to 1 other target non-token creature you control. You get 2 energy, and then at the beginning of your next end step, sacrifice that token unless you pay an amount of energy equal to its mana value. So Satya is a creature-focused, kind of aggressive energy commander that doesn't even need to be specifically about energy. Simply casting Satya, attacking, and then copying a creature is already really, really good value if that creature has like a powerful ETB or a leave the battlefield trigger. You're just getting a lot of value out of it. They're also swinging in at the same time. The token copy is rather. And then you're generating energy, just 2, not like a crazy amount, but just 2. And if you have a bunch of energy, you can keep that token forever to use for future turns, which is quite nice. He makes the most sense in an energy deck because he does generate energy, and being able to keep the token forever is obviously better than having to sacrifice it every single time. So yeah, Satya is an energy commander. I know there were some comments when I was reviewing the energy precon when it was first previewed. People were like, oh, Satya doesn't even have to be an energy commander. And that's true. You don't have to make Satya an energy commander, but I think he makes the most sense as an energy commander because he generates energy and then he provides a payoff for the energy. And if you are in an energy deck, I think he's a lot better in that shell than a generic one. Now, is Satya better in the 99 or is he better in the command zone? Well, we have other legendary creatures that can be commanders that deal with energy. Not Cayth. Cayth kind of dealt with energy, but I'm talking about the Fallout commanders. Dr. Madison Lee, I think, is like your energy commander's energy commander. You play a bunch of artifacts, which energy and artifacts, they are kind of overlapping and you can't really break them apart really because all the energy producers are usually just artifacts as well. So you might as well get benefit from the fact that you're playing a bunch of artifacts. She doesn't attack. She's not aggressive at all. She has tap synergy, and she just like incrementally generates you energy by just doing your thing and then utilizes the energy in powerful ways. And then Liberty Prime is kind of like an energy commander, but more of a Voltron commander. Like you want to be sacrificing your artifacts for value to it after attacking, and you're generating energy just so you don't have to always sacrifice energy to Liberty Prime. And it's an 8/8. It does a lot of damage. It can kill people very quickly. Satya is not Voltron, but it is aggressive focus because you need to be attacking every single time, and your tokens that you're copying are attacking too. So you're very much combat focused. You really want to copy like lightning runners and stuff, so you can really take infinite combats and really win the game off those. I think Satya is my favorite of the energy commanders. I think it's my favorite. I'm not super hyped on Liberty Prime. Like I agree that mechs are cool. Like that's not an argument I'm going to dispute. I just think if I want to play an energy deck, I feel like Liberty Prime has less of a feel of an energy deck than Satya and Madison Lee. I like both quite a bit, but I think I like Satya just a little bit more. So Satya, I'm going to put you up in the Great as Commander section. Next, we have the Elder Demon that is responsible for all the vampires on Innistrad by corrupting Edgar Markov. Not really corrupting him, more like giving him an option to be a jerk. This is Shilgengar, Sire of Famine. This is a 5-mana black legendary creature Elder Demon. It's a 6/6 with flying, and it says sacrifice another creature, create a blood token. If you sacrifice an angel this way, create a number of blood tokens equal to its toughness instead. And you can pay 3 mana, hybrid Orzhov, sacrifice 6 blood tokens, return each creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Those creatures are vampires in addition to their other types. So this card is sexy, but it's doing a lot of different things. So the first part, it's a 5-mana 6/6 flyer for 6. I think like Lord of the Pit is in shambles right now. The sacrifice ability is instant speed, doesn't require mana, doesn't require tapping, none of that stuff. You just sacrifice a creature, you make a blood. And then if you have a bunch of angels, you make a ton of blood. And then that's going to be usually enough, like 1 or 2 angels are usually going to be enough for its secondary ability. Pay 3 mana, sacrifice 6 blood tokens, and then you just mass reanimate everything. There's a lot of setup here, obviously. Like a 5-mana 6/6 flyer is already pretty decent. But then you're going to need angels on the battlefield, either changelings or actual angels to sacrifice if you really want to use that secondary ability. Actually, you don't even need to go angels, right? Like you just use this as like an instant speed sack outlet, make blood tokens. That's already pretty good. You don't have to even sacrifice angels. That's already a pretty nice outlet on a 6/6 flyer for 5. But then if you're sacrificing angels, you get a whole bunch of blood tokens, which is quite spicy. And then that last part is really spicy too. All those things you're sacrificing, including the angels or whatever, they're in the graveyard. If you're doing any sort of self-milling, that's going to be even more creatures in the graveyard. And then you just mass reanimate them for 3 mana at instant speed. Instant speed, by the way, not sorcery speed or anything. So that's really nice. They have finality counters on them, so if they do die, they're gone for good. You could remove them, you could not. You don't really need to, honestly. I think this card is kind of cracked. It has a lot of setup potential, but like even if you're not focusing on the angel part and the reanimation part, 6 mana, 6/6 flyer for 5 that lets you sacrifice creatures at instant speed and make blood tokens, that's already playable. That's already pretty decent for a couple of decks. And then after that, if you're actually like, you know, running angels or changelings or whatever, or even if you're not doing that, if you're just like sacrificing normal things, you get 6 bloods on the battlefield, then paying 3 mana, sacrificing 6 bloods and mass reanimating is just really good. It's a game winning at instant speed. You just do it like at the end step before your turn. You untap with everything, you attack, and then you win. Or you just like combo off at instant speed and win that way. I don't know. This card's really good. It is very appealing to me in terms of a build around. Like, how do you even build around it? Are you going Orzhov Angels? Is that the plan? Or are you ignoring the angel parts and you're running non-angels? Are you running like Massacre Nexus to turn all your creatures into angels? Are you a self-mill deck? I don't know. It's pretty open-ended. It's incredibly powerful, obviously. It's a very powerful card, but it is intriguing to me to see how you actually utilize it. Obviously, in 99 of like just Orzhov Aristocrats decks, you could just throw Shilgengar in there, and then it's having a grand old time. But you can also put it in as a commander. Yeah. I think he's going to be better in the 99 than the command zone, because I can't immediately think what you're going to be doing with him in the command zone. It is interesting in both spots though, in the 99 or command zone, I'll say that. All right, Shulgengar, great in the 99, I'll say. Next, we got 6, and sadly, it's not 6 mana. It's only 3 mana, 2 in a green. Legendary creature, Tree Folk. It's a 2/4 with reach, and whenever 6 attacks mill 3 cards, you may put a land card from among them into your hand, and then as long as it's your turn, non-land permanent cards in your graveyard have retraced, which means you may cast a permanent card from your graveyard by discarding a land card in addition to paying their other costs. So we talked about this one on the podcast, this week's podcast, and a lot of people were super hyped with it, and I was kind of down on it because I think, I don't know, the retrace cost, people were like, oh my god, this is like Eternal Witness on crack. You could just play all the cards from your graveyard. And I'm kind of like, no, you still have to discard lands, right? Like, it's not just like free to do this. You have to discard lands from your hand to do this. So it's not like an Eternal Witness or anything. There is an extra cost to it. It's still very powerful. And then the other thing is that to get those lands, either you're drawing a bunch of cards or you're like doing Life from the Loam shenanigans or something, or you can attack with 6. But the problem with attacking with 6 is it's a 2/4, so it's not very good at attacking. So you probably want to be giving it evasion or something in order for it to survive attacking, or else, you know, you won't be able to cast spells from your graveyard or retrace afterwards, you know? But yeah, I think obviously it's a lot of value. I think this card's way better in 1v1, where you can just, you know, play this turn 3, start stacking with a 2/4, and it probably will live. Yeah, I don't know. It's okay. I don't think it's good in a good commander. It's fine in the 99 of some decks. Things that want to discard cards, obviously, like Lord Windgrace, or not Lord Windgrace, maybe Lord Windgrace. Yes to Lord Windgrace. Yes to like the Gitrog monster. I think those are like the homes for it, and that's going to be great there. But it's not like something you just auto jam in all your green decks, because the Commander Clash crew was like on that page. They're like, yeah, this is an auto clue for all green decks. I'm like, no, I don't think so. There's a cost. But yeah, I think it's good in land decks. Yeah, it is definitely good in land decks. All right, 6, you are great in the 99. Next is Skoa, Ember Mage. This is a 6 mana red legendary creature, Goblin Wizard. It's a 4/4, and it says when it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to any target, and it has Grandeur. Yes, the return of Grandeur. Discard another card named Skoa, Ember Mage, sacrifice 2 mountains. Skoa deals 4 damage to any target. So you might be wondering, oh gosh, this commander is really bad. 6 mana, 4/4, deals 4 damage on ETB. That's not great. And then the Grandeur, when will I ever have another Skoa in my hand? And you can actually do that. You can do that even in mono red, but it's difficult. It's not easy. It's kind of cumbersome. The reason why, my friend, is because this is a common. This is actually made for limited draft. It's not made for modern constructed. It's not made for commander. It's actually just a cool callback, and it's a common that is for limited. And it's actually, not only is Grandeur a callback to an old mechanic that, you know, we haven't seen for a very, very long time, predates Commander, I believe. And not only is that a cool callback, but also the fact that you have to sacrifice 2 mountains to deal 4 damage is a callback to Fire Blast, which I believe was a very powerful burn spell during the early days of Magic. Like, it was like tournament winning burn spell. So that's a cool reference that I knew and I could share with you. Obviously, the card is not playable in Commander or constructed. I guess saying it not playable, that means like there's going to be somebody in the comment section who's going to immediately build it. And you know what? Good for you. I want to see the deck list. Hit me with the deck list if you actually make Skoa Ember Mage work in Commander. It should be fun, and I approve. All right, Skoa Ember Mage, I think obviously is poop in Commander, but like it was never meant to be for Commander. So yeah. Next, we've got another Flipwalker. This is Sorin of House Markov. This is a 2 mana black, a legendary creature, human noble. It has lifelink and extort. It's a 1/4, and at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, exile Sorin and then return him to the battlefield transformed under his control. His owner's control. Then you can flip him over, and the flip side is Sorin Aravis Neonite. It also has extort. It has a starting loyalty of 3, +2, create a food token. -1, Soren deals damage equal to the amount of life you gain this turn to any target. Very nice. And then -6, gain control of target creature. It becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. Put a lifelink counter on it if you control a white permanent other than that creature or Soren. All right, so out of all the flipwalkers, this is by far the easiest one to flip in Commander. Harder to flip in 1v1, but in Commander, if you're playing free-for-all with 3 opponents, you just cast any other spell and you pay the extort cost 1 time. Each opponent loses 3 life. Each opponent loses 1 life, rather. You gain 3 life, and then boom, Soren is now flipped over. That's simple, really. And the backside is actually quite good, especially the -1 ability. If you're in a deck that wants to be running Soren, you're going to be a lifelink deck. You can gain life very easily every single turn. It's very easy to gain life in multiplayer. So that -1 ability is basically -1, kill creatures, and then also possibly kill your opponents. Like, if you gain enough life, like if you gain like 20 life or something, you just be like, -1 Soren, you're dead. So that's really powerful, actually. That -1 ability is just insanely powerful. Even if you don't want to use this ability, then +2 gain food, that's quite nice. The ultimate, the -6, I mean, it's hard to reach, but it's not that hard to reach, I guess. And then it just is really good value. But I think this card, this Flipwalker, is all about the -1, honestly. Even the backside has Extort. How did I miss that, actually, when I was rereading it? The backside has Extort. So you just like cast a spell, Extort, do that like once or twice in a turn. You gain 3 life, gain 6 life, gain other life from your other lifelink sources, and then -1, and either all the creatures that you care about to die are going to be dead, or you just kill your opponents with it. Oh my god. And you can do that 3 times in a row before you have to actually create a food token with Soren. Oh boy. Oh, this looks really good. And it's a 2 mana one? Oh man. And it flips so easy. Is this just like really strong? Like, yeah, obviously there's a lot of Orzhov lifelink commanders out there. There's a ton. It's like one of the most popular archetypes for Orzhov. But this is one of the better ones, right? Like, if you just gain a bunch of life, you just flip Soren for 2 mana and then you just kill people. Man, that's good. All right, Soren of House Markov. It's obviously great in Commander, but I'm like actually excited to see how strong it is, honestly. I'm going to put it as a Tomer favorite. Yeah, I'm going to put it as a Tomer. This looks so busted, but I haven't heard anybody talk about it, really. Maybe I'm overselling it. Let me know in the comment section if I'm overselling Soren of House Markov, but I'm putting him in the Tomer favorites for now. I really want to test him out. All right, now we've got the final Flipwalker. It's another 1-drop Planeswalker that, I have to jump through some hoops to actually make it a Planeswalker. But anyway, it's Tamiyo, Inquisitive Student. It's a 1-mana blue, legendary creature, Moonfolk Wizard. It's a flying 0/3. When it attacks, you investigate. And when you draw your 3rd card in a turn, exile Tamiyo, then return her to the battlefield transformed under her owner's control. The backside is Simic colored. It is Tamiyo, Seasoned Scholar. It's a legendary Planeswalker Tamiyo, starting loyalty of 2. +2 until your next turn. Whenever a creature attacks you or a Planeswalker you control, it gets -1, -0 until end of turn. -3, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. If it's a green card, add 1 mana of any color. And then finally, -7, draw cards equal to half the number of cards in your library rounded up. You get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size. Okay, so first off, if you don't know this, I love Moonfolk. They're one of my favorite garbage tribe, specifically the ones from original Kamigawa, because that's like the most garbage. When they came back in Neon Dynasty, they started like not having an identity at all. Like, they used to all fly for one, and then like the new ones just don't fly. Like, half of them fly, half of them don't. I don't like that at all. And they all have like abilities they don't kind of adhere together as Moonfolkiness. But anyway, all I'm trying to say is I love Moonfolk as like just jank. It's my favorite guilty pleasure. And Tamiyo, I love that it's a Moonfolk wizard that you can be as your commander, and it flies. Very importantly, it flies. And it does little janky things like, okay, you attack, you investigate. If you're in a card draw deck, you can flip her. It does require you to draw 3 cards, so you can't do it like super early, I guess. Maybe you just cast Brainstorm though. Yeah, you just cast Brainstorm. You flip her over, and then you have to immediately +2 her unless you have like a doubling season or something effect on the battlefield that she starts with more loyalty than that. But you have to immediately +2 her, which is kind of want. It's like it's not exciting or anything, but I mean it makes it a little bit harder for your opponents to kill your creatures or attack you. That's nice. The -3 is recursion, possibly a little bit of ramp. That's nice. And then the -7 is pretty far away, but it probably wins you the game. You draw half your library, no maximum hand size. Yeah, it's a good planeswalker. Is it a commander? Is it part of the 99? I don't know. I don't know if it does enough to be a commander. It's very exciting though. I always like the idea of a commander that's 1 mana. You know, there's not a lot of those that are actually like playable. So this one is definitely on the better end of 1 mana playable commanders. I think I like it. Do I like it more than Grist? The backside's kind of like, eh. Yeah, you know what I do? I do because it's a Moonfolk. I like it. I would put it as a commander because it's a 1 mana commander and that entices me. I like it. It's neat. So it's a great as a commander, but honestly, I would say it's one of my favorites just because I like Moonfolk. I don't know. I don't like that it's not mono blue. That's my only criticism. It has to be Simic, and I really don't want to play Simic. If I play Tamio, what I would probably do is just ignore the fact that you can be in green and just keep her mono blue. Keep her pure and blue. Yes. All right, now we come to my boyfriend's favorite legendary creature, the Necrobloom. This is an Abzan legendary creature, a plant. It's a 2/7 and has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 0/1 green plant creature token. If you control 7 or more lands with different names, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token instead. It's Field of Dead. It's just a better Field of Dead on a creature because until it's turned on, you're making plants, you're making something. And then when it's turned on, you get zombies. Yay! And then also, lane cards in your graveyard have Dredge 2, which is very good. You may return a lane card from your graveyard to your hand and mill 2 cards instead of drawing a card. So it can inherently do lane things. You're never going to be missing a land drop or whatever. You're just going to be getting them from the graveyard, and you're going to be milling, and land decks are almost always graveyard decks at the same time. So you want to be milling, you want to be dredging at all times. And yeah, this is just like if Field of the Dead had access to 3 colors and was a legendary creature in the command zone. It's more fair than Field of the Dead because you can actually interact with it. It doesn't have like Ward 5 or something. And you know, your interaction pieces can actually blow up a Necrobloom as opposed to the Field of the Dead, which is much harder to interact with. But it also comes with Dredge 2 on your lands and also makes plant tokens early on. I think it's like it's not, I was going to say it's a fair commander. I think it is a fair commander. Is it a fair commander? I don't know. It's going to be a very strong commander. How about that? And the 99 is going to be very unfair because it's going to be a Field of the Dead deck. But the commander itself at least doesn't have like ward or indestructible or nonsense like that. So you can actually just shut it down, unlike the real Field of the Dead. I hate it. My boyfriend loves it, so I can't talk too poorly about it. You know, I'm happy for his happiness. I hate it though. Reluctantly, I'm going to put it in the great as a commander's spot. Obviously, it is a very great commander. It's very, very great. I hate it, but I'm happy for you if you like it, I guess. Next up, we got the face commander of the Eldrazi Precon. This is Ulek, Fused Atrocity. It's a Wooburg 5-color commander, except every single color pip is hybrid with colorless. So you can play any mix between Wooburg and colorless to cast it. It's a 2/5 legendary creature Eldrazi. It has the Void, so it has no color. And whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, you may pay 2 colorless. If you do copy all spells you control, then copy all other abilities, activated and triggered abilities you control. You may choose new targets for the copies. So this is like, I don't want to say Panharmonicon, but it's like the only thing that it can pop into my head. It just like doubles the value out of your Eldrazi spells, basically. You cast an Eldrazi, if you have 2 extra colorless mana around, you get to copy it. And then you get to copy everything that was on the stack too, which is quite powerful. It's a really good payoff, but obviously it's a 5 mana, do nothing, and then you have to pay additional mana to get the value. But then the value is really, really high. The value is incredibly high. And unlike Our previous Eldrazi commander leader from a precon, Zuladok, that was a colorless one. This is colorless. It cares about colorless. It's technically a colorless card, but it gives you access to all 5 colors of mana, which makes it like 10 times more powerful. So yeah, if you're looking for an Eldrazi deck, Kozilek is going to be the commander for you. Gives you access to 5 colors, so it gives you the best card pool to work with. And then it just makes all your Eldrazi spells better, right? It's really good. It's really good. It's pretty straightforward good. I guess the only cool thing that is not super straightforward is how it works with instant spells. Like if you have triggered ability on the stack, like Annihilator triggers from your Eldrazi or whatever, and then you cast an instant speed Eldrazi spell, you get to copy all the triggered and activated abilities that were already on the stack by casting the Eldrazi spell and then activating Kozilek's ability. So that's cool. It's not like super straightforward or anything, but it's like an extra little bonus that Kozilek can pull off. So yeah, Kozilek is obviously very, very strong and is like the best leader for an Eldrazi deck, basically. Unless you want to go for Eldrazi spawn, the token side, then you go for Azlask. So if you're going for traditional Eldrazi, you go Kozilek. If you want to go for spawn, you go for Azlask. That's how you do it. Okay, the last new legendary creature from the set is Moag, the Defiler. This is a 10 mana colorless 7/7 legendary creature Eldrazi. When you cast a spell, target opponent exiles half their library, rounded up. It has ward, sacrifice 2 permanents. Moag enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the greatest mana value among cards in exile. And Moag has Annihilator X, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on it. Oh my lordy. I feel like this card is going to be the biggest salt factory, the biggest salt mine I've ever seen in my life. Like this is like, this puts the old Vorinclex to shame. People hate being milled. Can you imagine exiling, not even milling, exiling half their library? They're gonna just auto concede, and then the Annihilator X. That's the best part. It's like the Moag not only is huge, not only is gonna have like 8 counters on it, but it's also gonna have like Annihilator X. And then he attacks, and then somebody just loses their entire board each time he attacks. Oh. Yeah, this is the salt mine if I've ever seen anything. I love it just because of how I know people are gonna be so salty about it. Like the cast trigger, honestly, unless you are a combo deck, it's not the end of the world. Obviously, it still stings. It's still going to be a little bit annoying, but it's really not that bad. If you're a combo deck, though, obviously it's very scary because if you lose your combo pieces, you can't even get them from the graveyard. They're exiled, but it's not that bad. I think people, though, casual players especially, overrate how feel bad's milling is, and honestly it's not that bad unless you're combo. If you're combo, you're going to be sweating. But yeah, but then the Annihilator trigger, I can see anybody being salty about. Can you imagine? You get attacked. But I guess the bonus side is that Moag's going to be like a 15/15 or bigger, that you're probably going to die very quickly to Moag. So the Annihilator part is not going to be super relevant. It basically just means after you get attacked, you don't have a chance to really crawl your way back. You're going to just be in the dirt. And you're just going to beg for death. And Moag will just swing at you one more time and then it's over. So it's not that bad. It is funny just how salty this card can actually be. Is the card good, though? I think the card is good. For 10 mana, you're going to get this huge creature. The exile part, it is relevant against combo decks. Not that relevant outside of that. So it really depends who you're targeting with. But then, yeah, when you have a huge creature with a huge Annihilator X on it, and has ward as well, that is pretty relevant. Yeah, it is good. You just want to have a Lightning Greaves on it. You just got to have some Haste Enabler, and then Moag's going to have a great time. Do I think this is a commander, though? Absolutely not. I mean, you could make it your commander, but you're in colorless, so you're going to have most of your deck just dedicated to being land ramp, or not land ramp, mana rocks, which is way worse, which means like you're just going to be one Vandal Blast away from just not playing the game anymore. So I don't like it as a commander. And also, all your opponents are going to just be like dogpiling you because everybody's going to be salty about Moag. So no, as a commander, no, do not do it. Like it'd be funny, but I don't think you're ever going to win. But in the 99, heck yeah, you're Eldrazi. You just put in your Eldrazi deck and you're going to have a grand old time. Your opponents are going to hate you, but you're going to have a grand old time. So finally, Ulamog, great in the 99. Very salty in the 99, but great in the 99. And that, my friends, is the tier list for Modern Horizons 3. All the legendary creatures ranked. It was only like 30-ish, 35-ish this time, which thank goodness, because I do ramble a lot. But yeah, this is what I think of the legendary creatures. Again, this is all my personal opinion. This is all personal bias. This is what I like and do not like. This is not a reflection of like how powerful all they are. Obviously, if like this was like a power ranking guide, I would put Nadu at the very top and then, you know, some other stuff below it. Who cares? But yeah. This is what I like and what I don't like, and it's all ranked together. Obviously, let me know what you think about these new cards, which ones you're actually going to be building, which ones you're hyped for as budget brews. I still do those from time to time, so I still always take recommendations. If you want me to do a certain commander as a budget brew, let me know in the comment section. I might get around to doing that. All right, thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you like this sort of stuff. And until next time, friends. See ya!